So rehearsals for Dead & Company's residency at the Sphere in 2025 have begun, and slightly surprisingly, John Mayer has actually given us a bit of a look at behind the scenes of the rehearsals in terms of the gear that he is going to be using for these shows, or at least what he has with him at this point in time. So of course, we're going to be breaking down everything that John has shown us in two separate posts that he's made to his Instagram page, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are just really excited to go hopefully see Dead & Company at this residency this year. I'm sure some of you guys have tickets for it or are trying to get tickets, and I know some of you guys also went and saw them last year. So pretty exciting stuff. I'm definitely looking forward to more live music from John this year. So let's break down the first photo, starting off with the guitar rack. So here is the guitar rack, and one thing just to keep in mind is that John does tour with more than one of these giant cases for all of the guitars. With the Sphere residency last year, he did have at least two of them, so there's probably some other guitars that we're not seeing that he's probably got with him, but this is just the teaser that we have. The caption was, "Rehearsal for Dead & Company at the Sphere Vegas has begun. Come and dance." So obviously John is really excited too that rehearsals are going underway because he's sharing some shots of the gear with us. The very first guitar in the rack that we see is not a surprise. It's Honey. I've done a whole video kind of documenting the history and some really highlight performances with this guitar in John's hands and some of the upgrade process and kind of things John has tweaked this 594 to become what we know as Honey. The very next guitar is the Fender Custom Shop Brent Mason Telecaster. This one is just a really cool option to see John using. You don't see him use a lot of guitars with maple boards that frequently. And this guitar, in terms of in the context of Dead & Company, when John injured his index finger last year for the residency, he did switch some of the guitars he was playing in response to that injury. And the Fender Custom Shop Brent Mason Tele was one of them. Part of the theory is that obviously it's just maybe a bit of a comfortable guitar for John to play when he was really avoiding the use of his index finger entirely. Plus it also has the bender as well, so maybe just made bending a little bit easier with that guitar when he doesn't have his primary first finger to actually use when he was playing. So that guitar is in the rack, not a huge surprise. It also was used for Till the Right One Comes on the Sob Rock album as well. That's kind of where this guitar originated in the kind of Mayer gear space and found its place. So cool to see it kind of becoming a bit of a Dead & Company guitar, which you wouldn't really have expected. Then the third guitar is a little bit of a surprise because it is the Super Eagle 1. We haven't seen John use a Super Eagle in a pretty long time. I've actually been wanting to make a documentary on John's use of the various Super Eagle guitars. So it's been a while since we last saw a Super Eagle in John's hands. So the fact that it's there in the rack is pretty cool to see. Obviously, kind of the original Dead & Company guitar, so really nice to see the Super Eagle 1 in the rack unit, followed by the PRS Dead Spec Silver Sky, kind of the current main PRS Mayer signature Dead & Company thing. So that guitar is obviously a given to see John bringing one of those along with him in the rack, along with the platinum silver finished McCarty 594. This guitar really is John's main humbucker guitar that he's been using for quite a while now. Pretty much any song that requires humbuckers, it really feels like at this point the platinum 594 is really what John is just favoring and going to use. Honey was kind of, in the spot of that, especially after the transition from the Super Eagles, but then the platinum 594 even kind of took the place of Honey, and just that's all really John's kind of uses now for humbucker tones. But it's a beautiful guitar, a really great sounding guitar. So again, no surprise here to see that guitar. And for the original Sphere residency before John injured his index finger, the two kind of primary guitars that he was using to perform was the Dead Spec Silver Sky and then that Platinum 594. But just as the previous two guitars were just an absolute given, these next two guitars are even more surprising, as we have a Super Eagle 2 and then this prototype Super Eagle thing that we really haven't seen a whole lot of, and there's some theories kind of going around as to what this guitar could actually be. But first off, the Super Eagle 2, really surprising. Really surprising to see this one in as well. Not a guitar that John ever played live that much. And if we go back to the rack that John had with him for the last residency at the Sphere, at least from the shot we have, the Super Eagle 1 nor the Super Eagle 2 were anywhere to be seen. So the fact that he's even bringing these with him for the rehearsals, I don't know, I wonder if it's kind of like maybe some of the vibe is going to be like Dead & Company throughout the years, or he's just embracing the sounds that he's been going for with Dead & Company from the kind of their inception, like 2015, 2016 to present day. Because at least from what it kind of seems like, based on the Dead Spec Silver Sky, John was really going after Jerry Garcia's alligator strat tones, because the Dead Spec is very alligator inspired. That's clear as day. So maybe he's kind of just embracing now the whole spectrum of sounds, and maybe a theory that I kind of have, at least, is that maybe we're kind of going to get like almost like an eras of Dead & Company or of the Grateful Dead sort of thing at the Sphere, where it's like, maybe it could be like more of a chrono set list where it starts off some of the earlier stuff and then goes through the Grateful Dead's kind of catalog in like a timeline maybe, and like going along with the catalog and timeline of Dead & Company. I don't know. Just something I kind of thought could be like, the start of Dead & Company, the start of the Grateful Dead, to present day, and the ending of the Grateful Dead as well. It's just something that I'm kind of thinking of that could be really cool to see. It kind of transitions along with the guitars and the gear and everything as the show goes on for the night. Could be a cool concept, but that's just something I'm spitballing and completely just thinking up of. That could be pretty cool. But this prototype Super Eagle is pretty interesting, because what it kind of looked like, at least when we saw it back in the summer of 2021, was that John obviously started off with the Super Eagle. That was his thing. Then the Super Eagles kind of got replaced by Honey, but Honey started off as a standard PRS 594 that John just then kind of modified to use with Dead & Company. Then we'd see this kind of prototype Super Eagle, or like a Super Eagle 3, you could almost call it, like basically is what it is, where instead of that narrow field pickup in the middle, it has 3 full humbuckers, and then as well the number of frets is different. The Super Eagles all have 24 frets, but this one has 22 frets. Then that comes into the question, okay, what about the scale length? Because the scale length, and I have it written down here, for the Super Eagles is 25.375 over the standard, like you see on a 594, 24.594. For just the difference in scale length there. So kind of a possible theory could be is that with Honey, John preferred the configuration of the full-sized humbucker pickups and then the neck in terms of both the scale length and then the number of frets on Honey, and like the Platinum 594 even you can take into consideration here. And then he thought to blend the best of both worlds with the Super Eagle design, and then this guitar with the zebra stripe pickups is what we ended up resulted in getting. But then John pretty much barely used it, and then it just went back to Honey and the 594 and the Platinum 594, and then just the Platinum 594. So I think that could very much be at least part of the process behind this guitar, because if John just was using Honey and then the Platinum 594, both of those guitars don't have 24 frets, they have 22 in a different scale length, so maybe he just decided, okay, I don't actually need 24 frets, so maybe let's look at making a Super Eagle, or Paul, can you design me a Super Eagle but that has more attributes of these two guitars that I'm also really loving? That very much could be kind of the thought process with this guitar. So very surprising to kind of see the Super Eagle 1, the Super Eagle 2, and then a Super Eagle 3 prototype, let's just call it, as well. It's kind of wild to see all these different guitars that John has with them, kind of very cool, interesting guitars that John has had his hand in designing. Pretty much all of them except for the Brent Mason Telecaster, because even the Platinum 594 does have the same pickups in terms of the humbuckers that the Super Eagles have too. So at least that is a theme that we've seen really stay with John, in that those specifically designed pickups for him have continued to be used by him for the humbucker tones. Just the actual style of the physical guitar and some of the other attributes is really what has been changing throughout the years. But the humbucker pickups have actually stayed very, very consistent. So only time will tell if these are the guitars that John is actually going to use at the residency, if he'll be using all of them, or if he's just kind of messing around with rehearsals, but might stick to kind of just the Dead Spec and the Platinum 594, which is what he used for the majority of the last residency. The one guitar that is missing, that is definitely sad to see not there, but understandable, is the Custom Shop Jeff Beck Signature Stratocaster that was actually owned by Jeff Beck, which was on loan to John from Jeff Beck's family and estate, which is really cool to see. There were a few different guitar players last year who were playing some of Jeff's guitars live, kind of, in tribute and honor to him. Really cool to see John using that guitar with Dead & Company, but the fact that it's not there, I think, kind of indicates too that it has probably gone back to the family in the state, is what I would assume. So I just wanted to mention that that's a guitar that we will really miss seeing in John's hands. All right, moving on to the second part of the behind-the-scenes footage that John has shared with us. It has to do with the whole amp situation, because the Sphere was designed for essentially these stages to be silent, which just makes things obviously a lot more complicated for musicians to actually perform when you're trying to keep the stage as dead quiet as possible. What the Edge did with U2's residency is he ditched his amps, which normally would be running and mic'd up underneath the stage. He'd have like 4 or 5 amplifiers all mic'd up under the stage. He went and used a bunch of the universal audio pedals like the Ruby to give him his tones, just because that was just the easiest and simplest solution to get through the whole silent stage issue for a guitar amplifier. What John and Bob Weir actually did with Dead & Company for the Sphere residency is just, it's pretty cool. And this is what they did in 2024 for the first residency, but now we just have a lot more information for the new residency. So right from John's post, check this out. For last year's Dead & Company run at the Sphere Vegas, I overcame a guitar tone engineering challenge through the help of large crates that could isolate the speakers from other mics while giving a little more ambience to the sound. This year, 2 brilliant minds have taken it to another level. This is the brainchild of my guitar tech, Jeremy Nielsen, and FC Owens, who designs and builds incredible full-size recording studios. The dictionary definition of wonderful: should I put a mic and a GoPro in here during these shows? This is wild, because John kind of didn't really seem to give much of a teaser and like a ton of context as to at least how his setup was being ran for the Sphere. But now John's actually showing us the inside of his cab, which is very psychedelic themed. It looks pretty wild in there. Obviously, you know, very Grateful Dead, Dead & Company themed on the inside. And then you see a Two-Rock 212 cabinet that is mic'd up. Now, this is actually the second time I'm recording this bit, because in the initial take, I talked about how it seemed a little weird that John would only be using one mic'd up speaker cabinet. I thought maybe, you know, if one of the old school Two-Rock cabs, it's an old school Two-Rock cab because you see the badge logo at the top of the cab. That's how we know it's one of the older cabs, like what John was using for the solo tour. But I thought maybe 2 mics on a 212 cab, and it's kind of running as 2 112 cabs, but just in a whole 212 enclosure. I thought maybe something like that might be going on. But to see John only miking up and using one cab is just definitely weird, because we know he loves to use more than one. Like, he used the Ultraphonics modded Bandmaster, the Fender Twin Reverb, and the Silverface 50-watt Overdrive Special last year. So I was kind of thinking in the original take at least, oh, is he only using one amplifier for rehearsals or one amplifier for this residency? Because the other shots that we got from John showcase what looks like a Vox AC30 and maybe a Tweed Princeton? I don't know. I'm not very well versed in Tweed amplifiers, so you guys in the comments can maybe fill in what you think this is, because I thought that was Bob Weir's crate. But it's not. John's actually been in the comments and clarifying that these are also mic'd up for his amplifiers. An Instagram user by the name of Vinny Versilio commented, "This is awesome. Is this giant AC30 actually working?" And John replied saying, "Yes, it's not giant. It's one of my guitar speaker cabs you'll hear at the Sphere shows." And then some people are asking, is that AC30 just a cab? You know, like, can you clarify what you're meaning here? Like, what's going on? And John said the amps are on stage running to these speaker cabinets. So kind of odd to see John using, like I said, I'm not sure if it's a Princeton or what kind of Tweed amplifier that is, but he's using like extension cabinets, I guess. Same thing with one of these AC30s. He's just running as an extension cabinet for his rig. So you can expect 3 amplifiers now out of this, instead of me kind of speculating in the original take what John might be doing or what's going on. But that's really cool. So you see the one, I love like the big sign, the lightning bolt logo there all lit up. It looks so cool. And the other one then with the Two-Rock cab is very psychedelic themed. It's just, they're having a lot of fun with it, and how can you not love something like this? And part of the reason why I assumed that crate was originally Bob Weir's is because we saw a shot last year of one with a hand-wired AC30 in it, very much what you'd expect Bob Weir to use. So I just was like, oh, Bob's just kind of changing up what he's using, and then this is John's. But John has actually clarified that this other one is also his. So really cool, really interesting to see what he's doing. Like I've said, if you guys can kind of, you know, help out in the comments maybe of what Tweed amp you think that might be, that'd be pretty cool to kind of, if you guys maybe help out sort that out. But yeah, really awesome to see that. So we can expect 3 amps at the Sphere. And yeah, definitely wanted to remake this back portion now that we know a little bit more information. I was trying to get the video up as quickly as possible for you guys, which, you know, one flaw of that is as new information comes out, I have to go and update it. But that's kind of all we know for the Sphere for 2025 so far, and the behind the scenes footage that John has shared with us so far just makes me really excited for new music, new live music from John this year. And I'm sure you guys are too, and I'll be documenting and talking about all the gear that John is using for the Sphere, some stuff hopefully for a new album this year as well. So stay tuned for all that on the channel. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Take care, guys. I'll see you on the next one.
Anyway, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you like what you see.